So the stakeholders who are the innovators within their organizations, they are very inspired by the way we work, and they ask the question, why can't all their projects work this way? And they try to go and change the culture of their organization, but unfortunately, many of them work in very traditional places, and they face a number of barriers in creating this culture of innovation. So we asked ourselves, how can we help our customers, the change agents within the stakeholders who work with us, be effective change agents in their organization? So the rest of the time that we have together, I want to leave you with very concrete tools and frameworks that you can use in your organization so you can all be very effective agents of change. Ready? Okay. So first, we will talk about how to assess your organization's innovation readiness and customize your innovation program, because we believe that the innovation program of one company cannot just be followed by another company. There are very specific barriers that you may face within your organization. So we created a way to assess this readiness so that you can customize your innovation program and be a more effective agent of change. Second, we'll talk about winning executive support using neuroscience and empathy. And finally, we'll talk about how to harness diversity for innovation. Okay. So lots of topics to discuss today. First, let's assess your organization's innovation readiness. Design-centric organizations have outperformed the S&P by 228%. This is as per the research by the DMI Institute. And yet, not all organizations are ready to tap into this mindset. So based on our experience, we've created a simple framework for an innovation culture. It has 3 pillars: people, process, and place. People refers to having people with the right skill set and the right mindset. So if you think about innovation being at the confluence of business, technology, and design, you need people from all 3 skill sets to be part of this successful project, right? From our experience, what we've observed is that companies know their business. They have business expertise. They have technology expertise. But the design expertise is either insufficient or completely missing. So my hypothesis about all the acquisitions, we have Fjord with Accenture, and many acquisitions that are going on in the industry, is really to fill this skill gap that's going on. So initially, as part of the people component, you need the skill, but that's not enough. You need the entire organization to embrace a design mindset in order to fulfill the promise of innovation. In a recent Fast Company article, an ex-employee of Apple said that the secret to Apple's success is not that they have the most designers or the best designers. It is that the entire organization has a design mindset and is committed to driving design-led innovation. So my advice to all the companies that are acquiring is that it's not enough to just get the talent in. You also need to have this design mindset. So it's not one or the other, it's both. Second is to have a process that supports innovation and not hinders it. So what are the 3 tenets of a process that supports innovation are empathy, starting with empathy and really understanding your customer's needs, collaborating across various disciplines, and quick iteration and prototyping and learning through the process. So a process that looks at failure as an opportunity to learn rather than something to avoid. And then finally, an inspiring place that celebrates collaboration and creativity. The architecture and the design of spaces that we live in also have an effect or have an effect on how we behave. So if you're in a siloed office space, you pretty much expected to be very efficient and productive. Whereas if you are in an open space where you have the opportunity, a lot of common area to collaborate, to meet other people, then you are encouraged to collaborate. And it breaks down hierarchies and builds connections with different disciplines. With this kind of radical collaboration is really the essence of innovation. So the 3 tenets are people, process, and place. So what we've done is we've created a survey where it's a list of 30 questions, about 15 minutes, and we have a set of statements, 10 statements, 10 groups of statements, and each one has 4 statements, and you can check the one that best describes your organization. So it takes about roughly 15, 20 minutes, and with this we are able to assess where our customers are in their innovation journey. So what is their innovation readiness? So from our experience, we've seen that there are 4 stages to an innovation culture. The first stage is organizations are interested in design, but they are unwilling to invest. So they don't want to make time for empathy. They don't want to hire designers. They're just interested in design. The second stage is they are invested. So the organization is making budget available. They are investing in design. However, they have some ad hoc success. It is not a repeatable process. The third stage is engaged. Engaged is the company now consider design as a core competency. They are trying to get their best practices together. Maybe they've created something called a center of excellence, but they're still viewing design as in the lens of product design. In the fourth stage, which is scaled, the company has completely embraced design-led innovation, and they're using this not just for product design, but to drive business strategy and to co-innovate with customers. So these are the 4 stages we've identified. So when the customers take this survey, they usually get a report. They get a report that identifies which stage they are in their innovation journey, and we also identify the top barriers. So based on the report, so in order not to overwhelm them, we identify the top 3 barriers, and we offer some strategic recommendations to overcome these barriers, strategic recommendations and resources. This is a free service. And we've, we just rolled it out recently, and we've had 68 customers take this survey. We found that more than half are in stage 1. That's the reality. Nobody is in stage 4, and the others are somewhere in between. There are, each customer gets their own customized report, but the top ones that we've identified are lack of design skill set and mindset, product development process not conducive to innovation, siloed office spaces, and lack of executive and middle management support for innovation. So if you want to learn more, please, you're welcome to check out fosterinnovationculture.com. And if you want to be an agent of change, you can take advantage of the tools that we have there. And we wish you much success. Next, we move on to the next topic, which is winning executive support using neuroscience and empathy. The framework that I'm going to present to you now was created by Professor Baba Shiv. He is a professor in Stanford Graduate School of Business. So I co-teach with Professor Shiv on a course called Customer Experience Design and Neuroscience Perspective for Stanford executive students. So let me present this neuroscience framework by Professor Shiv in this using an analogy. So imagine you're invited to a party, and you're invited to a party, it's a formal party, and if you're like me, you're a bit stressed, you don't know what to wear, who you will meet, you're just kind of a little bit stressed. You walk in and you see one familiar face in the sea of faces, And you don't know this person very well, you don't have much in common, but just their familiarity gives you comfort. So you go to them, you talk to them, and you hang out with them. But then once, after a while, you run out of topics to talk to them. You get a little bored. So at this point, you scan the place again, and you see a famous person that you've always wanted to meet. And you now have the courage to go up and introduce yourself and talk to them. And all this interaction with the celebrity makes you stressed again. So this is what Professor Shiv calls the type 1 and type 2 mindset. The type 1 mindset is the stressed to comfort pathway, and it is characterized by fear of failure. The type 2 mindset is the bored to excited pathway, and it is characterized by fear of missing out, or FOMO. There are neurochemicals at play here. When we are stressed, we produce cortisol. When we are comforted, we produce serotonin. And when we are excited, we produce dopamine. This kind of type 1 and type 2 mindset can operate in the level of the individual, it can operate at the level of the organization, and it can operate at the level of nations and countries. So if you think about it in an organization, let's say you're a founder of a startup. You're very excited about your idea. You are operating in a type 2 mindset. You get investment, and let's say you're successful. Now, the investors at some point will want to bring in some adult supervision. In other words, people with type 1 mindset. And as the company grows, processes and procedures will be put into place. This is a very insightful framework for you to keep in mind. It has helped me a lot. So how can you leverage this framework to influence your stakeholders? So if you are, what is important to keep in mind is that when you are presenting your ideas, you're very excited about it, you are operating in a type 2 mindset. And the executive that you're trying to influence is probably operating in a type 1 mindset. So when you know that, now you know how to influence them. So here are some recommendations. First, bring in the customer's voice. This is something we've leveraged a lot at SAP, and the reason for being of teams like mine who work very closely with customers. Find allies who have earned the executive's trust, which is bring in a mentor or some other expert who has already won the trust of that executive. You bring them in, it'll calm them down, it'll comfort them. Show evidence of validation results. So if you can just not talk about your idea, but you can provide some kind of objective data and metrics, so now the executive or the decision maker has a way to evaluate the idea objectively by themselves instead of having to just rely on you. That would make them more comfortable. Show rather than tell. So it's best not to just describe your ideas verbally, but also to bring in a prototype or something to show in addition to telling. And the rougher the prototype, but it still communicates your idea effectively, the better. So it needs to communicate your ideas, but the rougher you can make this prototype, the better, because it invokes the Ikea effect. You may wonder, what is the Ikea effect? Does anybody know about the Ikea effect? Oh, there's one. All right, okay. So let's tell you about the Ikea effect. So the Ikea effect refers to a Stanford experiment where Stanford students conducted an experiment where they approached the Ikea shoppers who were exiting the store with very large to-be-assembled furniture. So they divided them to two groups. So the first group approached the customers and asked them if they could call them back in 2 weeks. The second group offered the customer a free service. They offered them a professional to go home with them to assemble the furniture for them and to call them in 2 weeks. So 2 weeks go by, they call both groups, and they tell them, you know, the furniture that you bought is now in short supply, we'd like to buy it back from you. How much do you want for it? So audience participation. Who thinks that the self-assembled group, so that we have self-assembled group and professionally assembled group. So who thinks the self-assembled group asked for more money? Oh, okay. Who thinks the professionally assembled group asked for more money? Okay, you guys are very smart. You could argue that the professionally assembled group is probably did a better job putting together the furniture because they are in fact professionals, but the truth of the matter is overwhelmingly the people who self-assembled the furniture valued it more. So what that tells us is that when someone is invested in creating something, they value it more. Now coming back to our executive, how does that affect you? So when you're presenting your idea to your executive, leave room for them to contribute their ideas in such a way that they feel that they created it. Then they will value it more. So that's that. So moving on to the third topic, harness diversity to drive innovation. If you're interested in building a diverse team, you know, you've heard the research report, diversity leads to innovation. And you know, if you're interested in building a diverse team, and if you're interested in hiring, retaining, building your pipeline, you know, those kinds of aspects, please refer to my talk at the MX conference earlier this year, where, and it's available on Vimeo. So today I want to go beyond that. I want to go beyond that and say, now you have a diverse team. How do you leverage this diverse team to drive innovation? So there is this concept, another framework, called creative abrasion. So this concept of creative abrasion states that if there is too much of creative abrasion in a team, then no one agrees, nothing happens, nothing gets done, and everyone gets upset. When there is not enough creative abrasion in a team, now everybody agrees, but nothing new happens. So the key is to find an optimal level of creative abrasion in your team so that there are diverse perspectives, but there is a foundation of respect and commonality, so things can get done. This is easier said than done. This is hard. So I really want to emphasize this because, you know, now there is a lot of focus on diversity, which is great, which is important. But it is important to not only get these people in, get a diverse team in, you also have to learn how to leverage their talents and their creativity so that you can bring better outcomes for your organization. So it's really difficult, and I just want to share this funny video with you. At first people disagree. I mean, this was a bit staged, but what they are, they disagree, and you know, as a leader, you have to deal with that. There is disagreement going on. Over time, they start to listen to one another, they start to communicate and respect one another's opinions, and then we come up with our own way of identifying, you know, finding out how to work together in such a way that even the quietest voices are heard. That's what you want. The quietest voices need to be heard. And this drives innovation. And it also helps us tremendously in customer projects. When we work in a customer engagement, we are working with people from different parts of the organization. It is not unusual for us to bring together people from different companies and from a company but different parts of the organization, and they've never met before. We are all bringing them together in our workshop or project. And they have very diverse opinions. But because we are so skilled in working with diversity within our teams, this kind of difference of opinion doesn't overwhelm us. We know how to deal with it. We know how to work with it. We know how to leverage the brain cell of every person in the room. So this really brings about business outcomes as well. And that is very important to me, that diversity is not just something good to have, but it's the smart thing to do. So to summarize, we have 3 things. One is assess your organization's readiness for innovation and customize your innovation program, because what works in one company is not completely replicable. There are some common principles that you can leverage, but it's good when you can identify what your particular company's barriers are and how can you customize your innovation program, and leverage the tool fosterinnovationculture.com. It's free for you. Win executive support using neuroscience and empathy, and how can we be effective change agents so we can have the strategic conversation. And finally, harness diversity to drive innovation.